OK，
OK，大家好，Hello，我叫 Christine. I'll talk a little bit about my background, what I did in high school, and then I'll talk about my college experiences and just give some general advice and tips for if you are interested in going into medicine or interested in being pre-med or interested in going to Penn in general, because I have a lot of experience with Penn. So when I was applying to colleges, I already knew that I was interested in being pre-med, just because I had liked science. I had done volunteering at a nursing home. I had research experience, but it's not important. And as you can see, I had a lot of different majors that I was applying between because I was interested in a lot of things. I was interested in science, but I was also interested in the humanities, and I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to study. So when I was in high school, I did a lot of science research. I did 2 summers of science research. The first summer was after my sophomore year of high school, and then the second summer was after my junior year of high school. And with both of these research experiences, I attended science fairs and competitions and all of that stuff. I also have a lot of music experience. I was all state for cello performance and I have piano experience. So music was a big part of my college application. I submitted a music supplement. I wrote a lot about music. I was on the varsity tennis team and I was an editor on the school newspaper. So I had a lot of interests in both science and literature and the humanities, which is actually what I ended up focusing a lot of my common application essay about. It was about how I was interested in a lot of these things and I wanted to find a way to combine all of my interests in college and eventually in medicine. Um, as I said before, I was a nursing home volunteer. I also did some teaching for music, and I was just involved in some clubs at my school in New York. My school was a little bit more on the less competitive side. It wasn't as competitive as some of the other high schools I know, but I think it was easier for me to stand out because of that. I think that people are also probably interested in my course load. So I just took the most rigorous course load that I could in my senior year, which were these IB classes because my school was an IB school. I was very behind in math, or at least my school was. I took BC Calculus in my senior year of high school, which is normal for my high school. But when I got to college, I discovered that a lot of people take BC Calculus before senior year of high school. So you're probably ahead of me if you took BC Calculus earlier in high school. But it really doesn't matter. I think as long as you take the strongest course load that you can in your senior year and you demonstrate course rigor. And then I'll move on to a little bit about me currently, more about me. So I ended up attending the University of Pennsylvania and I graduated last year in 2024. As you can see here, I still never really found one area to really concentrate on in college. I did a double major in biology and health and societies. And then I did 3 minors in anthropology, bioethics, and chemistry. And I only did that because I was interested in all of these classes. It wasn't something like I just wanted to take as many classes as I could. It was genuinely because I was interested in these classes and because I knew I was going into medical school in the future. I thought that I would never get a chance to take these classes again in the future. So I really just tried to take as many classes as I could. Um, I did one gap year since I graduated working as a clinical research coordinator at the Perelman School of Medicine, UPenn's hospital, where I've just been getting clinical experience and working with patients. One thing about UPenn is that it is a very, very good place to be pre-med. And the reason why is because Penn has its own hospital system that's right next to the undergrad campus. It's a 5-minute walk away where you can do research, you can shadow, you can volunteer. And it's not only just one hospital, it's also the top children's hospital in this side of the United States. There are multiple different hospitals with tons and tons of professors and research opportunities. So you're never competing against other students to try to find opportunities or resources. There's always enough opportunities for all students who are pre-med at Penn. I would say that it's unique because, like, if you look at some other schools, like Princeton, for example, doesn't have a medical school. So I know people who are successful going to medical school from Princeton, but it's just a little bit harder because they don't have as many opportunities there. To get into medical school, it's really important to do research and different kinds of volunteering and making sure that you stand out as an applicant. And just having a lot of hospital opportunities near you is really, really useful. For my medical school application, I had these activities, these extracurriculars. Um, so this is what I did in undergrad. I did a lot of research. I had 2,000 hours of undergraduate research at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. I had 250 hours of tutoring and TAing. I had a lot of hours of both clinical volunteering and non-clinical volunteering, which I think is also very important in applying to college nowadays, is having a lot of volunteer hours, but making sure that you're passionate about your volunteering. It shouldn't be something that you are unhappy to go to, that you're dreading going to, because I think admissions officers can tell when you're doing something just to check off a box. So when you're doing volunteering, it should be something that you're genuinely interested in or that connects to maybe another part of your application, such as your research or such as your major or something like that. And I continued doing music and some other clubs and leadership in medical school. In all of my medical school interviews, actually, music was probably the topic that I talked about the most with my interviewers. They were all very impressed by my long-term commitment to music and how I've played it since I was little and how I'm still involved in it now. And music is a thing that a lot of people in academia and a lot of people in medicine like to bond over. So I think it was a really big part of my application, and I'm glad that I've continued with it. I will probably be attending UPenn's medical school, but I also received five acceptances total. The average number of acceptances is one. So most people will apply to about 30 medical schools. I'd say for undergrad, for colleges, most people apply to around 20 because that's max on the Common App. I applied to 20 schools for college. For medical school, I applied to 33. And then the average numbers of interviews that people receive is three. And then the average number of acceptances that people receive is one. So I'm very lucky to have had a very successful application cycle to medical school. And it's a very tough process, but I feel like I learned a lot going through it this past year. So I'll share first some advice about research in high school. I think that one of the most important things that you can get used to doing is getting used to taking initiative and putting yourself out there and reaching out to people. My first summer research experience was in the summer after my sophomore year of high school. And many professors at universities are unsure about hiring a high schooler who is that young or who doesn't have as much experience. But if you try hard enough, if you email as many people as you can, your local universities, they don't have to be top 10 or top 20 or even top 50 universities. My first research experience was at Hofstra University, which is a local university, definitely not anywhere near the top 50 of schools. But the purpose of your first research experience should just be to learn how to do basic science. It should be learning what you do in a lab, learning how to write in a lab notebook, learning how to conduct yourself in a professional environment, and just getting used to how you do research. So I think that first summer research experience was good because it gave me the basic skills to then apply to a more prestigious research experience the summer after my junior year of high school, which I've listed some of them here. I attended the Garcia Center for Polymers at Stony Brook University the summer after my junior year of high school, where I actually did material science and engineering research. The research itself was not something that I was totally 100% interested in. Obviously, I didn't end up doing any engineering in college. I wasn't too interested in engineering, but it was a really, really great opportunity because I met so many smart people who I have stayed close with in college, who have all gone on to really amazing medical schools and colleges and PhD programs. And it's just these programs are a really great way to make connections, and you maintain these connections throughout undergrad and throughout beyond undergrad. The Simon Summer Research Program at Stony Brook is also a really great program that I know many people have done. People come from all over the US, all over the world, even to go to Stony Brook on Long Island and do this research program, the Simon Summer Research Program. I know many people who've done SSP. SSP has multiple locations. Yale, I know people who've done the Yale Summer Research Program. There are many of these organized summer research programs, but even if you don't get into them or some of them are expensive, you can just cold email a local professor at a university nearby who's doing research that you're interested in and just say, hello, my name is Christine, and I am currently a high schooler at this high school. And I'm really interested in the kind of research that you're doing at this lab. And I was wondering if your lab had any openings in the summer for me to potentially help out on a project. And you can just send that email to as many people as you can, and somebody will get back to you to try to help you out. Because people in academia, doctors, researchers, physicians, they all want to help teach students. They're all very invested in teaching students because that's a requirement of the job is mentorship and teaching. So I think if you just reach out to as many people as you can, you will get somebody who says yes. Um, and you can conduct summer research in high school. Um, but I will say that research in high school is certainly not a necessity to getting into a good college or being pre-med in general. I know many people at Penn who did not have any science research experience before coming to Penn and have really successfully gone through Penn and gone on to medical school and gone on to other schools. But I think that summer research is definitely what made me stand out in my college applications because in my acceptance letter, I got a signed acceptance letter from my Penn admissions officer who actually wrote out that she was impressed by the research that I had done at Stony Brook University. So I think it's definitely something that's a notable achievement. Um, and it's not actually that hard to get involved in as long as you're motivated and dedicated enough and are willing to do the research and the emailing and you're willing to learn and maybe put yourself out there and do something that you're not comfortable with. So I'll move on now to just some general advice that I have. The first point I have already mentioned, it's to take initiative. I think that this is a really important factor that many people don't think about that much. My PI, so my principal investigator for the lab that I worked in undergrad, wrote me a rec letter that she showed to me. So I saw what she wrote for me in her recommendation, and she said that out of all of her students that she's had in her over 20 years of mentoring students, I have been the student who takes the most initiative. So what does this mean? This means asking for opportunities when they might not necessarily be available, asking for more. If you're doing a project that you're not necessarily satisfied with, or you feel like you have more time on your hands, or you feel like you want to learn something new, you can just ask to get involved in something else. And so many of the times they'll be happy that you asked, and they'll be happy that you want to get involved. So this goes the same for high school teachers, for mentors you have in high school and research and other extracurriculars. People really like it when you take initiative. This also means applying for outside opportunities, applying for presentations, applying for poster presentations. As long as you take initiative and show that you really want to try and do work, people take note of that. And I think it's a very impressive personality trait. So that kind of brings me to my second point, which is that in your college application, I think one of your most important parts of it is your personality. And you may already know this, but um, I mean, I thought that many people knew this, but when I was doing interviews this year for people applying to Penn, I'm an interviewer for Penn admissions. I found that out of the 12 people who I interviewed, two people I had conversations that I really enjoyed. And that meant that I didn't get bored. I didn't feel like I was trying to push the student to say more. Out of these 12 students that I interviewed, I enjoyed two conversations, and one student got in. And the one student that got in out of my 12 people who I interviewed was one of the students who I really enjoyed having a conversation with. So I think making sure that your personality really shines through in your essays, it really shines through in your conversations, in your interviews. If you can have like a 30-minute conversation and just show that you're a really nice person who would have a lot of friends on campus and who would be really helpful and outgoing and collaborative and is very cheerful, people take note of that. And I think it's really important because ultimately colleges want to accept the people with really great personalities. Um, so yeah, I think that's definitely really important. Moving on to my third point, I think when you're applying to colleges, each specific college, think about what's a special area in which I can contribute, whether it's identifying a particular club or a volunteering opportunity or a major. Think about what's special about you that makes that school perfect for you, because that's where you would go and you want to give these admissions officers an idea of, if I'm at Penn, I could see this person joining this club and being involved in these opportunities and being involved in this space of our campus. I see them taking advantage of these resources that we offer. I see them being collaborative with this other student, or I see them teaching and I see them getting involved in this club. So I think making sure that these colleges see that you would fit in and that you can give back to this community, you're a community member who will be of value, is really important. I also kind of touched on this a little bit earlier when mentioning Penn itself, but if you really do want to go into medicine and you're serious about being pre-med, when you're considering colleges, you should definitely think about hospital systems and access to volunteering. So that means that it's not impossible to have volunteering and good experiences if you're not near a hospital, but it's just so much easier. I found it very, very easy to get involved at Penn, but I know people, for example, at Princeton who actually take the train down to Philadelphia to volunteer because they don't have any opportunities in Princeton to volunteer. If you go to a large state school, they may have a lot of opportunities and resources, but there are also many other people who are competing for those same resources and opportunities. So it's not that you can't succeed in different environments, it's just easier and less stressful, maybe, to succeed in certain environments over others. And there are schools that are maybe notoriously better for pre-med than other schools. A lot of people really enjoy Brown as well, because generally it's pretty stress-free in undergrad. A lot of people go to medical school successfully from Brown. I met many people from Harvard, many people from UNC and Michigan, many people from Penn. Um, you can be successful anywhere, but you will have an easier time being successful at specific places. Um, One thing that I do think also helped me for both undergrad college admissions and medical school admissions is this idea, as I'm sure you're familiar with, of identifying a narrative or what is your story, what is your personal narrative. It doesn't have to just be one. I took kind of two interests and I combined them. So for undergrad, for college applications, my narrative was kind of that I was really interested in combining STEM and medicine with the humanities, by doing literature, but also doing research or studying history, but also volunteering at a hospital. So I really tried to build upon that fact in my college applications. Obviously, it's not the most unique thing. I wasn't the most special applicant. I wasn't the most, targeted applicant. I didn't really have a spike, I think. But as long as you really support your interests and back up your interests and show that you genuinely like your interests, I don't think any college can fault you for having those interests, right? In college, I was a little bit more spiky, probably for medical school applications. Um, my one or two main interests were pediatrics and pediatric rare disease research combined with teaching and tutoring. So a lot of my medical school application was centered around those two things. So having two main interests it just makes it easier for me to tie things back to each other, combine multiple interests into each other. Like, for example, I can combine teaching music and being the principal cellist of my school orchestra with my interests in teaching and overall mentorship. And I can combine volunteering at the Children's Hospital with my interests in pediatric rare disease research. Moving on, I think what's also very important is that you shouldn't box check. I think many high schoolers nowadays are falling into this trap. And I even noticed it when I was talking to some of the students who I interviewed for Penn. I would ask them, like, oh, can you tell me a little bit about some of your experiences? Or, like, what do you like to do outside of school? And many people would say, I'm the president of this club, and then I do volunteering at this place, and I do this. And then they didn't seem like they actually really enjoyed those activities. If I asked them about it, they would just give me a brief description of the activity, but they wouldn't connect it back to maybe why it was important to them or why they enjoyed doing that. And I think it's because I'm not sure if they actually enjoyed doing these activities. Many students try to just do activities because they think it'll look good for college applications, or they think it's necessary to have X amount of volunteer hours. Um, like, yes, volunteering is good, but I think you should be happy to go to volunteering. You should look forward to going to volunteering. Um, and colleges can tell if you're not. I could even tell if a student didn't enjoy something that was on their application that they were talking about. So I think you should not box check, but instead you should look for variations that you're interested in so that you're genuinely happy to do your volunteering, to do these extracurriculars. And then when you're happy doing these activities, it's easy to write about them and it's easy to talk about them and it's easy to have a good personality when you enjoy what you're doing. A lot of people in undergrad, especially, even in high school, but definitely in undergrad, I always got asked, like, how are you able to do so much? Like, I would often leave my apartment at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then I would get back at 9 o'clock at night because I had classes and activities and everything back to back. And it's because I really enjoyed doing everything. It wasn't a drag to go to volunteering or to go to research. You just have to really find what you enjoy. And it's okay to try out a lot of different things and quit as long as you end up in something that you feel like you really enjoy and that is meaningful and that is a great experience. Um, my next point is that the prestige of your undergrad definitely makes it easier to apply to medical school. But as long as you work hard and you're committed, you can be successful anywhere, no matter where you go for undergrad. Um, at recent admitted students weekends I went to for medical school, so it's meeting all the students who are admitted to Penn and Columbia's medical school. You meet a lot of people and you ask, "Oh, where did you go for undergrad?" And many people go to Harvard, Stanford, Columbia, Yale. That is definitely something that you cannot ignore. But there are many people who went to state schools, who went to schools that I've never even heard of before. I met someone who went to Brigham Young University, or liberal arts colleges. There are so many different routes to success. It might be easier if you're at a top college, but if you're at a different college with less opportunities, colleges and medical schools will know that. This is the same for high school and college. As long as you're taking the most out of what's available to you, you're making the most out of your opportunities that you have. If you go to a school that doesn't have as many opportunities, maybe, but it's clear that you really tried hard to make the most out of what you had, schools definitely take that into account. Whereas even if you go to Harvard or Stanford or MIT or the best school out there, if you do nothing, you're not going to succeed. You still have to be driven and willing to put in the work. And my last point is kind of just a little bit of a funny point, but you have to read books because there is a section on the MCAT, which is the medical school admissions test. There's a section called critical analysis and reading. And it's like the SAT English section, but 10 times harder. I did really well on the SAT English section, but I had a very tough time on the MCAT cars section because it's longer, it's trickier, it's very difficult. And I think some people are just better than others at it. And a lot of it just comes to enjoying reading and getting good at reading. Many people who do well in the cars section were actually humanities majors in college. So I think just getting used to reading books and enjoying reading books, even if they're fantasy books or nonfiction books, it doesn't really matter. But you should be committed to a lifetime of learning and academics and success, then you should definitely read books. So those were actually all of the general tips and advice that I had. So I guess I can open it up for questions now. If anybody has any specific questions for me about my journey to college, my journey to med school, specific questions about anything, what I did, essays, um, I'm happy to answer.
OK, wonderful，哇，great great。OK，如果家长有问题的话，也可以问。非常感谢啊，你刚才讲了很多，我觉得你这里面我最喜欢你的说的一句话就是 "Do not box check" 呀，这个真的不要基于形式去做任何一个interview 啊，或者是说一些什么事，只是你趋于你的喜欢。如果你学医不喜欢的话，确实是很难执行下去的。那么家长有问题也可以问。那么你妈妈还在吗？哎，我给我介绍一下妈妈，就是 Franny 啊，也可以你就在家长准备问题的时候呢，你也可以介绍一下，就是讲一下对女儿在就是也这么优秀啊。刚刚听她讲完之后，觉得她真的是可以看到她未来这里一个 big picture 是一个什么样的孩子，所以真的能感觉到她在整个的这个求医的这个路上，在高中阶段和整个的做 research 这个阶段，她做了很多自己的。非常喜欢，而且做了很多准备，而且非常努力的去做每一个细节，真的是非常的对于我们很多高中生来说是一个鼓励，和一个借鉴。那你作为妈妈，你来讲一下，就是说对于她的这个从医之路，她可能刚才没有剖析她自己，也可以讲一下你的一个感受，就说你可以讲讲，就说她最终确定是哪个学院。那么在这个过程中，尤其是高中阶段，你想给一些高中的孩子哪些建议呢？嗯
好的，那么我说两句吧。女儿呢，我自己也比较为她骄傲，因为我觉得呢，她真的是，很刻苦。然后呢，这所有的一切事情都是她自己来解决。我作为妈妈呢，没有插太多的手，也没有机会插手，但是
嗯
我可以谈一谈在高中时期哈，因为从高一开始呢。我女儿呢在进高，因为我们当时的那个学区呢就不是特别好的学区，
嗯
中国人比较少，大概只有 Asian 亚裔只有5%到6%左右，所以非常少。那么呢，我们也都没有补课，也没有，就像一些比较。好的学区啊，那个竞争很激烈。当时我们没有感觉到，但是从我的角度来讲，我是想把孩子培养成一个，非常全面的一个健康的，有理想的，知道自己想要做什么的，啊一个成熟的一个人。然后呢，从高中开始呢，因为我有2个孩子，另外儿子呢是打网球，所以后来呢就是陪儿子时间就比较多一些，因为比赛呀、训练比较多一些，所以从高中开始呢就渐渐放手，让女儿自己去规划自己。所以呢，就是从家长的角度来讲呢，就是提供资源，就是 resource。所谓的 resource 呢，就是尽量安排好他的休息啊、吃饭呐、这些后勤。然后呢，就还有就是关注一下孩子的一个朋友圈儿。对家长来讲，我觉得这个特别重要，是因为你孩子你从我自身的角度来讲，我女儿的就是高中他们会选课呀，会进一些他选那些比较advanced 的课，所以选那些课呢，都是一些功课比较好的学生，然后呢，他 activity 呢也都跟这些学生在一起，所以他自然他有一个很好的朋友圈儿。那么这个朋友圈，但是同时这个朋友圈又扩大，比方说他参加了一些 summer camp，他也什么 science research 呀，就遇到了都是有共同爱好的一些朋友，也交了朋友。那这些朋友在他的这个以后的这个升学呀、申请学校过程中，他们自己之间都会互相讨论呐、交谈。然后呢，在学校之间呢，选课呀、选什么，他们都会有一些互相的 push each other，就是互相。所以呢，我觉得朋友圈儿很重要，所以我很欣慰，很开心呢。我女儿有一个非常好的一个朋友圈呢，大家能一起来一起 study 是吧？
嗯
他们现在都还是很好的朋友，每次回来还要互相就是交流一下各个学校的情况，所以呢，所以我觉得蛮好的，对，
嗯。
然后他是
Next question.
OK
哦，here have questions, Alex. Please.
Yeah. Hello, Christine. Thanks a lot for the wonderful presentation. But I actually still have a problem, like a question about the high school research? Because currently I'm a high school student, and I know that the knowledge we have, they don't really match with college level research. So like, how do you manage to fill that gap and still be able to like achieve quality research?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you that there's a little bit of a jump between high school research and college research. I think
Mm-hmm,
a lot of high school research is very much just learning the basics, learning scientific language, learning how to use a pipette if it's wet lab.
mm-hmm,
But actually, the reason why I got hired in my undergraduate lab was
mm-hmm,
my PI said to me that she was really impressed that I even had high school research experience at all.
mm-hmm,
And just having experience in a lab, having poster presentations, having competed at science fairs, that's already enough research experience to be considered a great trainee for a PI. And then when a PI takes on a freshman or a new student, they're also really aware of the fact that it's a teaching role at first. No matter when you join a new lab, you're always going to have to learn new
mm-hmm,
techniques and new ways to present, new things to do, how the lab is run. So as the student, you're always the one being taught, and as long as you're receptive to feedback, it's not an issue. Like undergrad professors and PIs are all like very willing to teach students and to take on students because it's both cheap labor and an opportunity to to
mm-hmm.
teach a student.
Yep, thanks, but thanks a lot. We're talking about like I was still in high school. Like, what should I do? Should I just email to the like college professors and like just ask them for opportunities in labs or like during summer vacation or like how do I do that exactly?
I'd say if you're interested in doing research, then if there's a university near where you live, or some local university, some university where you're willing to travel to,
Mm-hmm,
find the list of PIs under maybe a specialty that you're interested in an area of research that you think is really cool. And a lot of times these professors will have their emails online. Universities post these emails, and you can just drop them a cold email saying, hello, like my name is Alex. I'm a high school student at this high school, and I'm really interested in this kind of research that your lab is doing. I was wondering if we could set up a time to meet over Zoom or in person where we could discuss about your research and if there are any opportunities for me to work in your lab this summer. And you can send that same email template, copy and pasted, edited to as many people as it takes, as long as you edit the part about that their specific research being interesting.
uh-huh.
But as many people as it takes, you're bound to get one yes, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Has to be
Thanks a lot.
now the
Thank you.
parents.
Yeah, of
Right.
course. Oh yeah, definitely parents do not email people for your
Yeah, it
kids.
has to be the student themselves.
Yeah. I actually have a question in the chat as well that I can answer that I got. So the question is, what percentage of students take a gap year before applying to med school? And what made me choose to take a gap year, which is a really good question. So nowadays it's really, really common to take one or even two, three, multiple gap years. I think the official number now is 80% of students, at least who graduated from Penn, but I think this is extrapolated throughout the US. 80% of people who go to medical school take at least one gap year. Many people take two gap years. Many people take three gap years. Some people take 6, 8 gap years. So the percentage of students applying straight through to medical school would be about only 20% nowadays. And the reason for that is that it's really, really hard and stressful because if you apply straight through to medical school after college, that means that you have to begin your application to medical school at the end of your junior year of college. So you have to have all of your research, your awards, enough volunteering hours, your MCAT,
Reference letter.
yeah, reference
letter.
letters, all of that has to be completed by the spring of your junior year, which is doable for many people. It's just a really stressful route to take. Taking the gap year means that you begin applying at the end of your senior year of college. So you submit your application around June, you're writing secondary applications in July and August, and then the interview season for med school is actually the whole year. So I had interviews from August and September all the way up until March. So when you're a student, when you're a senior in college, it's really hard to do these interviews because these are day-long interviews on Zoom. You have to miss class, you have to miss events as a student. If I'm working, I can just take the day off and, just take the day off at home to do my interview. And it's just a very much less stressful experience, I think. If you have the opportunity to take a gap year and do some research, get some work experience, make some money before med school, I highly, highly recommend it. Essentially all of my friends have done it and we have no regrets. Many people, it's even very common to take 2 gap years now. So yeah, if anyone has more questions on that, I can elaborate further. I did get a question asking about my SAT score. I got a 1550. Yeah, that's it. I actually applied also when SAT 2 exams were still a thing, but those aren't really a thing anymore. I think my hot take is that I don't think your SAT score really matters that much as long as it's over a certain threshold. Obviously, it looks really good if it starts with a 15, but even if you're on the borderline cusp, if you think your score isn't as good as it is, it's not going to automatically screen you out. No one's going to automatically toss your application in the trash if they don't think your SAT is in the top 99th percentile. As long as your overall application is strong, having a slightly lower SAT score will not kill you. Okay, I did get another question. Wondering when you reach out to join a lab as a high schooler, were you looking for paid internship or unpaid opportunities to join the lab? Right, that's a good question as well. I do think that my first opportunity, my summer research experience, the summer after sophomore year of high school, was technically an internship in that they paid me a stipend to do research. And then I think the summer experience, the research experience, the Garcia Summer Scholars Program, the year after that was paid in that I had to pay money to do research. In high school, I think you have to be a little bit less picky about if you get paid or not. A lot of these summer experiences are definitely pay to play, which sucks, but sometimes that's just what's available. The really top research opportunities like RSI, Research Science Institute, are free. But those are really competitive. I mean, I did not apply to RSI because I didn't think I could get in, but I know many people who did it and say that it was the best summer of their lives. So I think if you can apply to these programs that are free, and that are really prestigious, it's definitely worth applying to. But I think getting paid in high school for research is out of the norm. It's very likely that it will either be unpaid or you will have to pay. In college, you should get paid to do research because it's a job. But in high school, it's more experience for you, which I think is the caveat. Obviously, if you're looking to get paid, you should definitely find another job and get paid. And that's also a really great experience on your college applications, is working and making money and getting a job. But summer research is just a different kind of experience where you're going to be hard pressed to find somebody who pays you as a high schooler. MCAT score, I got another question. MCAT score for med school carries much more weight than SAT score for college. I think so. I heard some med schools set a cutoff score for consideration. I do think it depends on the med school. I think the SAT, it's a little bit harder to judge because the numbers, it's like hard to tell the difference really between maybe a 1520 and a 1540. Like at the end of the day, 20, 30, even 40 points or 50 points. Like if I looked at 2 people and one of them had a 1550 and the other had a 1500, you can't tell there any difference between these two applicants, right? But on the MCAT, each point difference is a little bit more of a difference. And then even like I know many people who've scored 1600s, but I know zero people who've scored a perfect score on the MCAT. It's a much more it's a much more difficult test. So even getting within like, I think a lot of top schools, the goal is a 520 to play it safe, but many people have scored in the high teens, 517, 518, and gotten into Penn and Columbia, Harvard, a lot of top schools. Okay, those were all the questions I had in the chat. Does anyone else have any questions that they want to ask or clarifications?
OK，那妈妈你再继续讲吧。这个他们在准备 questions 的时候，你再继续讲。刚才你提到了交友很重要，
这个非常重要，所
嗯
以如果你的孩子的朋友圈儿你看到呢，都是一些心思花在学习上，很健康向上、积极向上，的孩子呢，很阳光的孩子，那你就不用太担心。那如果的孩子呢，交的朋友圈儿都是 party 呀、或者是有一些什么不好的去设计一些什么 drug 或者什么的圈子，你就要非常小心了。所以这个当然在我们华人圈子里，也许这些事情不是很多，但是因为当时我们的那个校区是在一个华人比较少的地方，所以这些情况还是有的。另外就是我女儿在整个考大学的这个整个的过程中，准备过程中，绝大多数都是她自己做的。因为我这妈妈还算是比较洋妈，没有怎么推。她在这个过程中呢，我觉得对她锻炼也很大，对吧？
厉害，很厉害，没有请过问。对，这里我插一句啊，就说 Christine 未来呢，如果有时间，大家有兴趣，对于他刚才所讲的，就是所做的这个经验呢，非常感兴趣的话，他也可以做我们的一个 counselor，或者是说，帮助一些孩子去辅导。如果你愿意去申请。这种，这种就是去医学院的这条路，如果是他可以帮你做一些建议，或者是说给你指出一些方向，你们也可以来找我们公司，然后我们来跟 Christine 进行一个，就说看看他的时间是怎么样的。同时呢，他同时又是 UPenn 的这个面试官，就是所以对于申请大学，如果想要去申请 UPenn 的孩子，这也是非常好的一个福利。那么我们可以近距离的让他可以给我们提前一些面试，或者说您对 UPenn 感兴趣的话，让 Christine 可以给我们做一个辅导，或者以后我们有一些孩子可能对 UPenn 都感兴趣的话，都可以做一些1对1的辅导。如果你有需求的话，都可以来找我们。好的，那妈妈你打断你了，你继续。
对，我突然想，还有一个就是，我就是他很多事情全部都是自己来做，在这个过程中，所以我觉得哈，对家长来有个建议就是，你可以在旁边看着，或者在旁边 support 一下，但是呢，很多事情都让孩子自己做。就比方说刚才那个家长，他就说找那个 research 的 opportunity，
嗯。
那么很重要一点，我刚才也在里面提醒，就是一定让孩子自己去写那个邮件，去跟 professor，就是家长呢，你可以帮助他，跟他一起交谈，讨论一下这个话术啊怎么写，但是最终一定要孩子亲自去申请。所以我女儿呢，所有的 research 啊，夏校啊，summer school 啊这种活动呢，全部都是她自己申请的，所以我也很开心，她在这个过程中呢学了很多东西。还有就是音乐，就是功课这么忙，他一直都没有放弃哈，他是对音乐的喜爱。我想这里面很多学生也都小提琴呐、钢琴呐、大提琴啊什么的，但是我告诉你，就是说不要因为升学繁忙而放弃，因为这个。另外呢，我女儿上大学以后呢，她还继续参与那个orchestra，就是那个音乐会就是叫什么呀？对，就是 orchestra。
band 对啊，band。
不，他是 Oxford 啊，然后就是因为繁忙的这个学业中呢，每个星期抽2个小时在那儿 practice，对他也是一种放松。
嗯
放松是一个非常非常重要的事情。不但你申请高中，最后那个senior 和 junior year，你要准备申请大学，你很 stressful，但是音乐在这个过程中呢，其实真的会帮你放松，帮你解压的。所以呢，我给大家一个建议哈，就不要放弃。好多家长我听说一到功课忙，什么体育啊，音乐啊这些爱好都放弃了，一门心思去升学、去补课、去学习，其实有点得不偿失哈，这是我个人的一点想法。
是的，是的，尤其未来的人才都是跨学科的人才，所以美国尤其是美国非常喜欢这种跨学科的人才。比如说
对
你是一个 STEM 的孩子，那么你很喜欢戏剧或音乐或
对，
体育，他们是很欣赏的。所以
嗯，
家长让培养孩子的过程中多角度的去支持孩子，尤其是音乐、体育，像美国是音乐体育的大国，
对
他很多很多美国人，实际上像我周围有很多美国人，我就感觉他们真的是花很多很多的精力跟金钱
对，
去 follow 乐队，follow 这个就是这个 sports，就是
嗯
比如说，他们会花非常多的钱，尤其这个人可能不是那么的有钱，他可能就是一个普通的工薪阶层，但会花很多钱去 follow 这个乐队，但是你会发现每一个美国人，无论他是18也好。或者是十几岁也好，或者80也好，70、80也好，他都会有自己 follow 的乐队和这个 follow 的这个就是
对
这个 sports，就是这
对
个非常震撼的。所以就是所以如果你在大学的时候，或者你在跟你的就是你在写文书的时候，展示出你对文艺跟你的专业的结合，或者你的体育跟专业的结合，实际上也是非常好的一个就是
对
topic 的一个主题，对。
对对对，是这
所以
样。
不要就只局限于亚洲式的思维，就我只是学习。其实，尤其是 AI 的技术未来越来越兴盛的话，那很多东西是可以取代的，很多单纯的计算跟学习是可以取代的。它更要的是一个高端的一个思维模式。
对，思维太重要了。另外就是给孩子一个机会发展自己的特殊爱好，
对，
他真正做自己的喜欢，他就有 passion，他就会
嗯
做得很好。像我女儿的同学很多也是跳舞，在大学里边继续跳啊，都非
嗯
常好，因为你这些都可以写在文书里边，因为
嗯嗯，
学校的这些 club 也需要这方面的人才呀，
对对。
是这样子。
其实它需要很多新鲜的、不一样的、different 的人才来
各
充足它的
各种各样
大学。它不，
是的，
它不仅仅是要一个单一的人才，所以如果你有很新鲜的思维，像新鲜的血液一样注入这个大学，他一定会感兴趣的。所以就说，很多家长一定在培养孩子的过程中，从小就说，就是一定让他知道他喜欢要什么，然后你在这方面去支持他就可以了。Oh, here is more
I
question.
have two questions actually. So the
Okay.
first one is what happens if you're really interested in music or are really good at music and it's something that you want to continue, but you also want to be a doctor? So should I apply as a music major or should I apply as a pre-med? And I know that's definitely a big decision. That's probably a tough decision to make. But I actually know a lot of people who have been in similar situations. Um, I think ultimately, if you want to be a doctor, um, it's going to be a very, very hard thing to do if you go to a conservatory and you only study music. But good thing, there's many dual degree programs. I know Harvard has one with the New England Conservatory. Yale's music department is very, very strong. Hopkins has the dual degree with Peabody Institute. Northwestern's music department is really, really strong. And the way you handle this is you apply as a double major. You can do this at Northwestern where you apply as, you have to get in separately to the music school. And then you can also do a double major in something that's, pre-med or business. And I know people who've applied as double majors in music and biology to Penn. And that's because you want to continue doing music and you don't want to let that part of your life go, but you also want to go to medical school. And it's really possible to continue music at a very high level and still go to medical school. So I think that's probably the better route you should take is definitely apply for private school. You'll have a lot of music opportunities, especially if you go to certain private schools. I think as long as you do the research and make sure that a lot of these schools have good music programs, Northwestern, Yale, even Carnegie Mellon. I think some schools have very great music. Oh, Michigan as well. Um, a follow-up to that is which way do you think has the higher acceptance rate? Is probably applying music first if you really think your music is that strong, applying as a music major first and then getting in music-wise, and then applying as a dual major and adding on, biology or whatever pre-med major you want to do. Because ultimately at a lot of these like Ivies and top private schools, there aren't going to be too many people studying music. So I think if you really are very good at music, you will stand out and you will get in and you'll be okay. The second question is how many percent of people who are pre-med get into medical school? And it's definitely scary because I think nationwide, among all undergrad schools, the acceptance rate is probably about 60 to 70%. But that's because there are many people who go through this process without knowing what to do. Many people only apply to 5 medical schools when the suggested amount is probably closer to 25 or 30. A lot of it is really luck, and a lot of people just don't know the things that you have to do. But once you do a little bit of research and once you educate yourself a little bit about the medical school admissions process, which I would be happy to go in depth and talk about as well, the acceptance rate shoots way higher up. I think Penn's medical school acceptance rate, so people applying to med school from Penn, is about 88%, 88 to 90% of people getting into med school compared to the national average of about 60%. And I know many people I know friends who have applied to med school and not gotten in. And there's a lot of reasons why this could happen. It could be you don't have enough volunteering hours, you don't have enough clinical experience, you applied late, you didn't apply to enough schools, you didn't apply to your state schools. But your interviews maybe aren't as great, your essay writing is not as great. But many people are reapplicants and apply successfully their second time or their third time even. As long as you learn your mistakes from your first time and you apply again successfully, you will be okay. I have a friend who didn't get in his first cycle and he just got into Yale for med school. So it's not a death sentence at all if you don't get in your first time. You just have to probably, think about yourself and do a little bit of reflecting, figure out where you went wrong, and then show that you've learned from your experience. Music as a double major, how good, strong is regarded as good enough to be safe to apply? I know many people who go to something like Juilliard pre-college would be considered something like a lock, or not necessarily. You still have to be strong academically, of course, but music-wise, the musical ability is there, of course. I think if you're if you're really committed, you've done years and years of music, and doing the double major is something that you really want to do. Also, keep in mind that being a music double major with something like pre-med is hard. There's very few people who do it for a reason, because it's hard to do the number of hours of practice you have to do to successfully major in music and improve in music while also studying for pre-med in your classes. So just make sure, keep in mind that a double major is something that you really want to do. You have to really be committed to practicing while also studying and doing all of that. But I think the likelihood that you're good enough to get in as a music major is high. Do you know of any international students going down the med school path, and is it more difficult for them if they go to a US undergrad? It's definitely easier if you go to a US undergrad. So I know many international students who apply. I have friends who are international students. One of them went to Harvard, one of them is going to Penn. they have been really, really successful, but it's definitely a grind. I think international students have to work extremely, extremely hard to gain admission to a lot of schools because a lot of med schools are, they have limits on the number of international students they accept. You don't have a state school, so you don't have that sort of like safe option to apply to. It's a little bit more risky as an international student. But I will say, like, I know many people who have successfully applied as international students from Penn and from other schools. It's just, I think, stressful, really stressful and more hard. But I mean, if you go to a top school, you're likely to work hard anyways. Um, do you have any advice for incoming ninth graders? I think first focus on what your favorite class is in ninth grade. My favorite class in ninth grade was actually English. I loved my English class in ninth grade, and I really liked history. Like I really like my bio class was fine. I didn't really enjoy it that much. But then thinking about what class is your favorite, and then therefore maybe what extracurriculars you could join to expand on your interests. So because I really liked my English class in ninth grade, I ended up joining the school newspaper so that I could write and so that I could do more in that space because I knew I was also interested in being pre-med. So a lot of my other extracurriculars were research. But overall, like definitely develop a work-life balance early. Like what, my mom was saying before with if you have like a sport or a musical instrument or a hobby that you really enjoy doing, like don't quit it because you're stressed out by school. You should definitely continue it because it'll be a good way for you to relieve your stress. And even if music provides other stressors, like you can't practice a piece or a piece is too hard, at least it's different stress from school. Right. But yeah, just try to like if you're incoming ninth grader, focus on maybe what area you're interested in, whether it is English or biology or chemistry or maybe even like math, and then just try to like maybe find like a volunteer opportunity or find a club that you're really interested in because everyone says nowadays that like long-term involvement is really good, which I know is really stressful as a ninth grader, but you really should not be stressed about college in ninth grade. Just do what makes you happy. And if you do it well enough, you will be successful.
Great.哦，
Yeah, that's all the questions I had in the chat.
keep going，对，还有吗？questions？
I don't see
我
any.
我我我这看不到，对，不知道我可能设置的问题。OK，
好像没有 question 了。
对，讲的非常好。妈妈，那你继续，就是真的是感觉今天的分享非常的好，非常的有含金量，也非常优秀的女儿，相信她未来在从医的这条路上一定会非常successful 的，非常成功的，嗯。那么就是我想问一下，哦，这个您来跟我联系。如果是说你想要，比如说让Christine 未来跟您做一些这个 business 方面的话，就跟我来联系，找我一下，然后我来跟你对接一下。对我们公司会来做一个对接。对，在他的这个申请的过程中，你觉得在最后的阶段，比如说他最后你们选了 U Penn，为什么会选 U Penn？因为我知道你背那么多的大学路了，那你妈妈也可以讲讲，你也可以讲讲为什么你最后还是选了
你是指的是医学院呢，
对
还是
医学院，
哥伦比
I
亚？
can talk about for both undergrad and for med school. So, to be really honest, the reason why I ended up at Penn for undergrad was because it was the best school I got into. But I think it was meant to be because it's a really great place. I actually applied early decision to Brown and they deferred me and then they rejected me. So I think it's proof that you really do end up where you're meant to be, even if you don't see it in the beginning. But I love Penn. I love Philadelphia so much. I can't imagine not going there now for undergrad. So just like just also like life tip, if you get deferred or if you don't get into your early school, like it's not the end of the world. You'll be okay. You'll be successful wherever you go. Um, as for maybe why I will probably choose Penn for medical school, um, Philadelphia is a very medical city. There's actually a statistic floating around that 1 out of every 5 doctor has trained in Philadelphia at some point in their life. Because there's a lot of med schools in Philly. It's a really great like medical environment. There's a lot of learning and people around you who are interested in the same things. And also like just location wise, Columbia's med school is really, really uptown. It's a little bit older. I just think that Penn's location is very central in Philly. So it's just like a really great space. And the specific research that I'm interested in, this rare disease, this rare pediatric disease research is pretty much only available at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. So I think if I were to continue doing that in medical school, it really would make sense to stay at Penn and be involved at CHOP because the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia is the best children's hospital and it's the best residency program for pediatrics. So if that's like what I end up pursuing, then I think it would be really great to stay at Penn. Another question here, in which year did you participate in science fairs in high school? How to prepare? I guess this was a little bit easier for me because my high school had a research program. My high school did not have many things. We did not have debate. We did not have mock trial. We did not have FBLA. We did not have many of these other, clubs that a lot of high schoolers do because we did have research. So from freshman year of high school, I took research in school and I did a little mini research project in class at school. And then because of that, they send you to local science fairs. They're not like prestigious science fairs by any means, but it's to get experience. So I had my first science fairs in ninth grade and 10th grade, but my first legit science fair with my summer research was in my junior year of high school. And that's when I had a really big board and I had to prepare a speech and I had a judge and I had to prepare for questions. And it's hard. It's a lot of work to prepare for this stuff. I remember spending hours and hours on my poster and editing my poster and memorizing a script and making sure that I could answer all the questions I could about my poster. It's just really something that you have to put your time into. But also, I think a big tip is you really can't be afraid to ask any questions to your research mentor, your PI, a grad student, because if you're doing something in lab and you're not really sure what you're doing, you just have to ask the question then and understand what you're doing. Because then when you're prepping for these research fairs and for questions, if you sound like you know what you're doing, even if you don't actually know, but if you have an answer like you sound like you know, people will be impressed by that. You just have to really be confident in your research and your abilities. And you have to be smiley and a good personality because people like that. But you have to be confident and take, ownership of your work. Like you did all this work, like be proud of it. People also really like that. So, yeah, I mean, it was easier because my school had a research program and basically we signed up for these research fairs through our high school. But if your high school doesn't have a research program, there's still ways to compete at local science fairs by, registering as an individual participant. You just kind of have to be ahead in searching up when these research fairs occur, when the deadline might be for submitting your poster, for submitting your abstract. You just might have to like email somebody to ask if you can apply as an individual participant. And if you're international, then I don't really know how that works because I know that there's definitely international science fairs because people come to compete to ISEF, which is the International Science and Engineering Fair. They compete internationally, so people come from all over the world, but I'm not really sure how local qualification processes would occur. I just know how that works in the US. So yeah. Do we have any other questions?
Great, great。我在这里做一个广告啊，3个小广告。第一个是，就是 Christine 未来呢可以帮助一些学生，比如说申请医学院。如果是说你们 interesting 的话，比如比较有兴趣的话，可以跟我们联系。另外一个，他是未来的他是 Open 的，就是 interview 的这个面试官。然后呢，可能会跟很多孩子对于 Open 的申请 Open 的孩子会有帮助。如果今年他已经面试了12个学生了，所以非常的有经验，而且所以如果你未来对 UPenn 的申请，有需求的话，我可以跟我们联系。另外一个，我们公司呢，可能近期会推出一个关于 AI 跟 Health and Care 方面的一个 interview 的一个公司的实习。那你也可以跟我们联系，我们未来会这几天会把一些海报这个 flyer 会放到一些群里或社群里，所以你们都可以跟我们联系。
Um, I got a question. Is your personal essay important in your medical school application? I actually think it was one of the most important parts of my medical school application. I consider myself a strong writer. I think writing is definitely one of my strengths. This was probably the case for both applying to colleges for undergrad and definitely applying to medical school. In a lot of my interviews, actually, my interviews told me that my interviewer was like, your personal statement is the most, is like one of the most impressive personal statements I've read in the past few years. Like, this is the best personal statement I've ever read. I actually got that comment like multiple times from different interviewers. So I think that definitely speaks to how important my personal statement was in my medical school application. That's not to say that like you have to be a good writer. I think many of my friends would not consider themselves strong writers. I think as long as your personal statement is not bad, it's okay. Just having a really good personal statement can kind of make a difference between maybe getting accepted or getting waitlisted, or it can maybe like give you a little bit more interest in the beginning. But if you have like an average to, a good but not special personal statement, like I don't think anyone's going to reject you for that. Um, in terms of undergrad majors for pre-med students, what do you suggest and which are the most popular? This is a good question, actually, because I think most people think that in order to be pre-med, you have to major in biology or neuroscience or chemistry or something like that. But that's definitely not the case. In fact, I double majored in biology and health and societies, which is kind of a combination of history, sociology, and anthropology. So I actually took way more humanities classes in undergrad. I took a lot of English classes, I took a lot of history classes, sociology classes. I took way more of those than I did STEM classes in college. Um, because what ultimately matters is just you get your pre-med requirements done, but outside of your pre-med requirements, which are, bio, chem, orgo, physics, outside of those core classes, you can take whatever classes you want. So I know people who majored in English, I know people who majored in dance and who majored in, theater and who have majored in all sorts of different things and have gone on to medical school. Of course, you can major in biology and you can major in biochemistry. Just major in whatever you're interested in, because if you're interested in it, you will do better and get better grades, and then your GPA will be better.
Mm.
And that's important for med school as well. But also, like, undergrad is your last chance to kind of take classes that you're interested in. So if you're interested in anything outside of medicine, you should use this opportunity in undergrad to take these classes, because you're going to go to med school or you're going to graduate and then work for the rest of your life. Like, you're never going to have these chances to take crazy classes again. Like, I took a class like about sports science, medicine, and technology, which was really, really cool. Um, there's a class called the chemistry of winemaking that a friend of mine took. You just take whatever you're interested in, basically.
对。
Wonderful questions。哎呀，any questions？今天家长问的 questions 都不错啊。
对，我想插手一下哈，我女儿这个 面试哈，这个对我觉得很 impressive 的就是，那个面试官对他的 对他的 essay，几个学校像 Open 的什么都说他见过的是写的最好的，所以我就在这里给我女儿做个小广告，就是如果呃哪位家长啊、学生啊需要帮助啊，因为他也想帮到别人，他觉得这个 gift。他也愿意帮，所以有人需要呢，就跟 Bella 联系一下，我们可以看一看怎么能够帮到你。
好的，好的，非常好。就是对，就是在美国呢，写 essay 非常重要，就是它会展示你的优势、你的能量、你的特点，怎么跟你要去的这个学校去 match，这个是很重要的。比如说刚才我们开场白说的，我们像比如说我们的今年的，我们有一个非常好的一个招生官，也是不那个 counselor 就 Shirley。他今年这几年都是很多 Stanford 的学生，今年有一个哈佛的学生、Harvard 的学生，还有几个 Stanford 的学生，还有 UPenn 的学生。那他有点像是 Stanford 的收割机了，所以他评价就是 Stanford 要什么样的学生，要有野心的孩子，想当老板的孩子。所以你在写文书的时候呢，多说一句，就是说你要把你的优势，尤其是你高中这4年做的事儿和你的社会活动 extracurricular 这个 activity。跟你的就是想去的这个学校，就是你要把它挖掘出来，你要怎么很好的写出来，所以你一定是一个很好的写手是最重关键的。那么怎么样成为一个很好的写手呢？如果你现在还是一个初中的孩子，或者你现在正在看视频的家长，告诉你的孩子怎么样成为一个很好的写手，就多看小说，各种类型的小说都去看，不一定非得是说怎么样给他设定类别。因为越看的越多，尤其在平时或暑假，他未来的他一定是文思泉涌的。多看书，因为我们的写文书不是说让顾问带他写，在美国这是不允许的，但一定是顾问跟他一起讨论思路。但即使是这样，你也得写得出来。所以说，多读小说，广泛的去读一些阅读很多东西，这样子你的文笔才会好。嗯。
是的，我看我的女儿还有她的同学朋友，每次来家里来玩儿时，每个人手上都捧着一本书，就是好像休息的时候没事随便就是拿一本书就在读。这些孩子非常优秀。
是是是是是。
Maybe when I was younger, but definitely not now.
嗯。
But I guess there's another question, which is the topics of my essays for undergrad. So my Common App essay, I'm not like the hugest fan of now. I don't think it was my best reading I've ever done, but I wrote about how I volunteered at a nursing home and how I played music for the residents in this nursing home and like, some of the conversations I had with the people there and what I learned from it. I'm like not the biggest fan of that, but it worked, right? Actually, one of my favorite essays when applying to college was the prompt is like this basic prompt, like, oh, what will you contribute to our community? So a lot of people write about a special skill or a talent or a hobby that they have. And I remember writing the essay, starting it off with like, oh, I have a really loud laugh. Like you can always hear me laughing, and I laugh a lot, and you can always hear me, and it's. But then I turned that into like, oh, but that means that you'll be able to hear me cheering people up when I'm staying up late, working with my peers, writing on this article for a newspaper. Or I'll be able to cheer someone up if they're having a bad day at lab. And I really want to spread happiness around the campus. So I think that was one of my better essays on applying for undergrad. And actually for a similar prompt for medical school, one of the prompts is like, what makes you special? Like what can you provide? What can you contribute to this diverse community? What makes you special? And one of my like quirks is that I have perfect pitch. So I wrote the essay saying like, oh, I have perfect pitch. But this means that it doesn't only mean that I'm really great at listening when I'm playing music. It also means that I'm really good at listening to patients when they're talking to me, or I'm really good to listening to people and collaborating with them. So maybe it's cheesy, and obviously it's like a stretch and it's a little bit of an attention grabber, but it works. So, you can think outside the box a little bit.
嗯。 对，写什么样主题的都有。我们有去斯坦福的学生去写饺子的主题，被录了。后来以后每年都写饺子，好几个孩子都发露写饺子，挺有意思。写什么样的主题都可以，但最重要的显示出你的个性、你的优势，一定要跟你所去的学校去契合，要展示出你是有一个有个性的化的人，这是很重要的。好的，妈妈，那你还有继续要分享的吗？比如，
我觉得都讲的差不多了，我觉得很多都是孩子知道的比我更多，尤其是进了大学以后，
是，
所以我都觉得
非常自豪，对，非
对对。
常自豪，对，而且未来他学医，像我在美国非常崇拜这个医生哈，我觉得医生跟护士，首先我有一个感觉就是医生跟护士是有等级的，因为你有的时候去医院做检查的时候，你就看那个护士乖乖的在做很多事儿，但是医生出来之后，他们都站在旁边等待着，然后帮着做辅助的事情，所以医生的地位是非常高的，能看出来是有等级的，等级差别的。另外一个，我觉得就是未来的这个美国的医生其实是非常的愿意，就他不是很 care，就是你有没有钱进来，他是治病很主要的，这个是非常的不一样的。我觉得这一点是我们很欣赏的，就是你有没有钱，有没有保险，他可能都会那什么，
因为他这个在这个去医学院整个选择的过程中非常的漫长，很痛苦，很折磨人。但是真正的有爱、喜欢当医生的，最后才能生存下来。
是，
所以确实是要有这种思想准。本来我还跟我女儿讲，我说不要这么辛苦了，我说不一定非要当医生，或者去做医学方面的 consultant 啊，或者什么的。她说不，她要去学。他要去考这个 MDT、
对。
MPAT，要去准备，所以这个一定要真心热爱才行。
对对，据
这是
我所知，你们的家庭条件非常的优渥，然后对于他来说，他选不选择医生其实都 doesn't matter，但是他非常喜欢，那就说明他非常热爱，而且他从小一直就在，比如做很多 research 啊，做 science 的时候都偏向于这个领域，那就是一直都是很热爱的。你
对，还有
你会，
一点儿，我想分享一下，我女儿刚才提到，就是在大学里，她选修了很多人文方面的那种学科哈，我认为很重要，因为我周围还有一些朋友呢，孩子3年就毕业了，或者怎么提前1年毕业，可能学费会省一些，但是你从孩子的人生角度来讲，好不容易进了大学了，你就读这4年书，你3年就毕业，还有其实大学里边能够 offer 的很多很多的很有意思，对你以后一些科目哈，一些课程，对你以后人生都有，其实有些就是你人都要不断的提高或者丰富自己，这是非常有帮助的，所以就 take advantage。
是
我是希望
不要太着急，
是这样子。
对，不要太着急，尤其是其实我们都有孩子去了大学，像我儿子也是今年刚刚大学毕业。那么，他就跟我说，妈妈，高中太漫长了，太苦了，但是大学太快了，歘就过去了。我也感觉好像怎么你都大学毕业了呢？对，所以我
对
更多的家长，其实另外一个呢，你就像您刚才说的，大学里有很多的科目可以去 take 去学，另外一个多交朋友。他
嗯，
大学好的大学是你有一个社交的场所，多交朋友，为未来铺路，就多去，你包括你未来的走向啊，business 呀，人脉呀，这都是很重要的。
对，
嗯
就尤其是就是说你选择不同的科目，你丰富你的自我提升，你不单单是单纯是理工男呐、或者理工女啊，或是学 science 的，或者学什么，但是你学了很多，像我女儿又学什么人类学呀、她还去学什么运动的什么东西，但就是说你这个知识面就很广，就是你
嗯。
这个人更够丰富一些，对自己以后提升也很重要，因为以后 AI 呀。很多地方都会代替啊。那你有很多的这种多方面的这种知识的话呢，你就更有竞争力，对吧？
包括是不是心理学对于学医也很重要，因为你可能要去了解 patient 的这个心理啊，嗯，
Yeah, yeah. I think it's like nowadays in med school, like having a well-rounded education and definitely being humanistic and empathetic is being emphasized a little bit. It's not just about who, can memorize all of the different organs the fastest. It's also about how a patient would trust you when they're looking at you as their doctor, or how you can like break sad news to a patient if they're getting bad news. So like nowadays, med schools really want people who fit the bill in kind of all of those aspects of medicine.
Yeah. 家长还有很多questions 吗？这有一个对你的评价，对，非常好，非常好，那你还要再学几年？大概？
So medical school is 4 years. Some people choose to do it in 5 years if they do more research or if they get another master's degree, but I'll probably do it in 4 years. And then the way that it works after medical school is that you choose what kind of doctor you want to be. So you choose if you want to be an eye doctor or a skin doctor or a pediatrician, and then depending on which specialty you want to do, is how many years of specialty specific training after med school. So they range anywhere from 3 years to 7 years for some surgical specialties like plastic surgery or neurosurgery. And then after that, you can go even more specialized within your specialty. You can do a year or 2 or 3 of fellowship. And then after that, you're officially a doctor and you can practice medicine on your own. But I mean, at that point, it's like a job, like any other job, like banking or consulting. The hours are essentially the same. You're just a little bit more stressed out.
很好，很好。希望未来就是，而且你家里有一个医生了，你爸爸妈妈就很放心了哈。
开心，很开
对，
心。
很开心。对对，那还有 questions 吗？对，这里面我刚刚接到了一个家长的一个短信，说希望未来请你做这个医学方面的帮助啊。那未来我可能会跟你做一个接触，我觉得这是一个非常好的一个对，你把你的很多 experience share 出去的话，帮助一些高中生，然后也是非常好的一个经验，
我觉得这个蛮重要的，就是过来人的这种 shared experience，就可以告诉这些高中生少走弯路，因
对
为
对。
有些人就是不东一头西一头就抓了好多东西，不知道抓重点。我觉得如果你不是很清楚的话，我觉得找这种像 Bella 这边有一些专门的这份，我觉得有一个指导是很重要的，真的
对。
是少走弯路。
美国其实孩子进入高中阶段就进入了竞争序列，所以呢，不要走弯路，尽量不要走弯路。对于当然很多孩子其实都做了很多东西，但最后这个东西有的时候会浪费你很多时间。如果你有一个非常好的顾问，就是指导你不走弯路，走直路，让你节省时间，更多的时间跟精力用在你非常喜欢和感兴趣的事物上，把它做得很好和发扬光大。同时呢，另外一个，我们这些年有很多顾问都送了一些，包括今年我们有 Shirley 送了很多孩子去常青藤。那么最重要的一点就是说，如果你想去 top school，你的这个 academic 一定要 keep 在一个非常好的高度。如果你很一般，那你去的可能性很低。所以就是说，当然了，你的extracurricular activity 一定要做，怎么做这个都是有很多讲究的。也希望以后可以家长有兴趣可以来咨询我们。好呀。如果家长没有那么多的 questions 了，我们今天就妈妈你没有特别多的补充了吗？有没有要补充的？
没有了，因为有的话以后他们都可以找你，可以再
对对对，我们以后可以再
没问题，对，
组织
再来。
那个，我们再过段时间可以再组织讲座。如果我们再可以放在一个 another topic，可以就说可以来讲这
对，
样子。
因为这里边很多的细节，我女儿因为时间有限，她也没有讲。比方她申请大学怎么申请医学院呐、这个过程什么的，还有很多的细节了。以后随时再找机会吧。
好呀，好呀，可以呀，我们随时再找机会。然后，因为今天也是第一次跟你女儿聊，那么就是展示出来她非常的亲和。那么这个我觉得也是作为一个非常好的一个条件呢，去跟学生 talk 的话，她不急不躁，非常的包容，非常亲和，这是非常好的一个素质。嗯。好呀， 那
我发现
今天
在这个过程中真的是成长了。这个大学4年呢，她
是，
小姑娘变成一个很成熟的一个真的是我也很骄傲。
对，非常骄傲，非常骄傲，跟你一样非
对，
常感到骄傲，而且
没有了。
再一次的恭
每个
喜你
孩子
啊！
都是这个过程，进了大学以后，很多事情是自己 handle 啊什么的，
嗯
对人接物啊，这些真的是，以前他告诉我不喜欢小孩子什么什么的，现在对小孩子好亲啊，因为在儿童医院做了义工，做了 research，就知道怎么去跟小孩子交流啊。我看他跟小朋友交流也是很 positive 的鼓励啊什么的，非常好。
嗯，这个不用急，女人，我觉得女孩子她的年龄随着年龄的增长，接触的小朋友，她未来，我在26、27岁的时候，我对小朋友根本就没有任何兴趣的。那我28岁结婚，29怀我儿子的时候，我就觉得，我在28怀孕的时候，看见孕妇跟小孩儿的时候，我就特别激动，一个箭步就冲过去了，就看见那小孩儿的婴儿就想抱起来。所以女孩子她有一个时间的，她在很小的时候她都是孩子，对，为了
贝拉，对不起，我可以问一个问题吗？
啊，当然，of course，
我就想问一下，比如说要是学医的话，医院的义工是不是得做很久？就是每年的夏天，或者是这个有什么要求呢？
Like in med school.
Yeah, if you want to apply med school, so
So like in college and
if you want to apply for med school, so how long like a volunteer in a hospital?
yeah.
So
I mean, so there are definitely these soft requirements that med schools have nowadays. Like you need to have research, you need to have clinical volunteering and non-clinical volunteering.
yeah,
So
how many hours
um,
required?
there's not necessarily a minimum. It's just like the more you can do, the better, right? But generally, I think the standard is a research heavy application is an application that has more than about like 1,000 to 1,500 hours of research. Like not many people have research heavy applications. Many people also have clinical heavy applications because if you are going to go to med school, they want to make sure that you have experience with patients and that you know what you're getting yourself into. So I think that's about 200 hours is probably the minimum of clinical volunteering or clinical experience. And then you should also have non-clinical volunteering, which is sort of like volunteering at a homeless shelter or volunteering at a food bank, because there's a lot of healthcare aspects that are impacted by, not your biology, but by where you live or by how much money you have.
Community.
Yeah, like
Community.
giving back to your local community. And they really value these things, these activities that you do. So I think like meaningful hours is anything over like 200. Um, and then for shadowing, I think they just want to see like 50 hours of shadowing. And then that's kind of like a box check, like as long as you hit 50 hours of shadowing, that's probably good. But everything else, it's just, the more you can do, it's like probably better. But obviously, you can exert yourself. You will probably spend more hours on the things you like doing more. But clinical experience is probably the most important thing to have.
好，谢谢。那我想问一下，我女儿今年她正好12年级毕业了，那她12年级这个暑假，做不做义工，这个有关系吗？
No, just relax.
哦，OK，
Oh man, no, don't do anything. Go on vacation.
OK，OK，
the last summer to enjoy.
Yeah, in college, all of her summers will be working hard. She can have this last summer to relax.
OK，那就好。我想义工是不是要常年坚持才行呢？
No,
所以
it's
说，
like it's serious, but it's not that serious.
哦，OK， 那就好，谢谢。
Yeah,
Yeah，
leadership is obviously something that like a lot of
哦，
people look for. But that comes in all different sorts of forms, right? It's not just you're the president of a club. It's also like maybe you're TAing for this class and people come to you and ask questions or they ask for help on studying
嗯
a topic. Or it's also like if you're working in a lab and you're the oldest student in the lab and now all of a sudden you're the person who students in the lab turn to ask questions. Like there's leadership in all different forms, and
嗯
med school's like you're going to be a leader in some point in your undergrad,
哦
like in your undergrad experience if if you're like driven and you
I
work hard and
see
you want to succeed. So it's not like you should try for leadership. It's just like it'll happen naturally, and then medical schools will see that.
I see，所以说这个申请 medical school 的话，在大学里边你要加入 club 的话，就是那个 leadership，就是跟你当初比如说高中升大学的时候，那个时候不是要求有 leadership 吗？那实际上是比较是一样重要的。
Yeah, I would.
哦，OK，
leadership 在任何时候都很重要，在美国很重要，就很重视这一点。leadership。
OK，哦，明白了。我还以为到大学里边，大家是不是 summer 的时候都去做 intern 啊，或者做什么的？
No,
是不是？
no, just like pack or something like that. Pack for college. Go shopping.
OK， 好，谢谢。leadership 也很重要，好的。
对，leadership 很重要，因为你未来在写简历的时候，你申请 internship 或者是工作的话，就是你的这个领导力他很强，他认为是有帮助的。对
，I see。所以说大学里边参加一些 club， 然后当一个 leadership 也是同样重要。
对，当然，对，因为他会就是，而且你可以社交很多朋友，因为其实，在大学社交是一个很重要的一环，你要交朋友嘛，
好，谢谢这个信息。
对，我儿子在大学，在纽约大学在做那个，就是一开始是大一和大二的是联合国的一个第三大头儿，他们有个联合国组织的第三大头儿一辩论嘛。那么到大三的时候，大三的时候，他做那个有一本杂志，他们旅游杂志，NYU 的旅游杂志，他是那个总统就 president 底下管4个国家的学生300多人。这个经历他会写在他的这个，就是申请工作上，应该都是非常有用的。
在大学里边当 leader 是不是更不容易了？比高中的时候还不容易啊？
要竞选。
There's like more opportunities for leadership. Like it's easy. It's easy to make happen.
不是很难，所以就是多去申请，多去各种 club 都会邀约，对，多去申请，多去看，然后多去参与，
在这个过程中你就提升你的 people skill， 这个是非常重要的。
那比如说你要是申请医学院的话，在大学里边这个 leadership 是不是要围绕着你这个兴趣呀，你这个专业的方向呢，参加比较相应的这些 club 呢？
Not necessarily. Like one of my really close friends, one of her really big involvements was dance in college. She was in this dance club. They do dance shows twice a year. It's a very big time commitment. And she ended up being the director for her dance show one year. And she like spent all summer, she spent so much time on it. One of her most meaningful experiences for med school, and she talked about it a lot. So that's like leadership. And like one of my like leadership experiences is being like the section leader for cello in the orchestra and like, holding sectionals and, teaching the new students and being a leader that way. So it's not only academically, it's also like, in your clubs and your other outside interests. If you're the captain of a club soccer team, even like that's also good.
OK， 那我还有一个问题就是说，对这个 pre-med 的这些学生来说，夏天的时候去那个 study 那个 abroad 是不是就不是很适合了？
It's not as common, but it still happens. Like I have one friend who even applied straight through. So he applied and went straight through to medical school with no gap year. And he took a semester abroad in Spain in his junior year. And he's MD PhD, which is even more impressive. But it's doable. You just have to do a lot of planning. And maybe you have to take all of your pre-med courses earlier, because then when you're abroad, you're not going to take organic chemistry abroad. You're going to take like, like Spanish culture or whatever. And you might have to take like a gap year. It'll be really hard to go straight through if you study abroad, but nowadays global health is a really big thing. A lot of med schools are emphasizing global health and,
嗯
like serving communities outside of the United States who are impoverished, and giving back to communities that you feel a tie to. So I think studying abroad is a really great way to integrate interests in
嗯
global medicine or rural medicine. And especially if you're like learning a new language abroad, like I think that's a really great skill to have. And a lot of people write about that for med school.
嗯。那你觉得现在那个 AI 取代了很多工作，他们有人说这个 AI 这个诊断现在都超出人类了，那你这个将来的这个前途怎么样呢？学医呀、
Like,
AI, how AI
yeah.
affect the medical?
I think medicine is actually one of the most stable careers out there, right? AI will only help medicine in terms of the technology.
嗯
At the end of the day, like, I don't want an AI doctor. No one wants an AI doctor. Everyone always wants to see the doctor, the person, because the person is going to have a better sense, a better feel, a better connection. So
嗯
while AI can help maybe make a doctor's job easier by taking notes faster or giving you a list of potential diagnoses
嗯
to reference, like technology is always improving, but people are always going to want a human.
嗯呀，谢谢。
我们再找时间请
好
Chris 过来做分享，比如说我们再找一个细的话题，在医学这方面的，因为在医学这方面，我们肯定申请探讨的领域也很广的。
嗯，
嗯
是。
嗯
贝拉，你说现在因为你儿子在那个 STEM 嘛，是吧？你这
嗯。
个学 pre-med 将来当医生和去那个华尔街，比如说去一些投行，这两个你觉得你怎么看呢？
嗯，就看你的孩子最擅长哪一块儿。就比如说像包括今天 Christine，我感觉他就是一个做实事儿的孩子，那么
嗯
他可能更适合去当医生。那么，我儿子呢，可能他更擅长于做，比如说，喜欢社交啊，喜欢
嗯
去创业呀。那他肯定是未来在投行啊这块儿先做一些，就是一些基础的工作。过几年他肯定是要创业的。所以看你孩
嗯
子的兴趣点，比如他是特别专注于科研或这领域的，那么就说研究方面的，那他我觉得比较侧重于在医学这块儿，或者说
嗯
对脉的这个是比较适合他。如果他很外向，他又想
嗯
展示他自己，那么他也有自己无限的想象力，他可能有很多 idea，未来怎么样，我要干什么干什么，跟谁合作，他有这样的，你可能就鼓励他去投行这样子的公
嗯
司。可能更接触更多，
嗯
会有价值的一些人群，会给他很多 idea 的
嗯
帮助的，但是这两条路我觉得都，不容易，但是世界上
嗯，
没有容易的路，但都是非常不错的路，嗯，
之一呢就是这个时间比较漫长，
对对。
然后呢
其实很
这个
稳定啊，未来出来以后，比如说，很稳定，但是未来 AI 也会实现一些工作，会取代
对
工作，但是医生主要的一些医生工作还是他，比如说跟patient 的去了解 patient 的很多细节呀、心理呀，或者
嗯
医疗的一些发展，还是
嗯。
骗不了人的，嗯
对呀，因为我女儿她就是这次那个申请大学的时候，就是她一些面试官都是投行的一些人，然后呢，她本来是一直就是想学医的，然后这次这个面谈之后呢，都是投行的嘛，然后
嗯
她就觉得哎，好像也都不错嘛，我看她就是有点儿这个动摇，所以
嗯
说我就想，那你这两条路。因为你去了大学之后，也没有那么长的时间给你选择嘛，特别是学 pre-med，这个两个是完全不同的方向，所以
嗯。
你在这个方面是怎么选择？这现在好像有点面临一个这样一个问题。
不用着急，就是你的女儿进入大学之后，她非常快的就有主意。
嗯，
我的儿子进入大学之后
是
信基督教呢，特别
啊，
虔诚。进去之后没2个月不信了。哎，我说当时你信的时候受洗的时候啊，痛哭流涕的。我说我好像失去了一个儿子，我给上帝了。那你为什么突然就不信了呢？他就说就不信了。那我想肯
嗯
定是很多学生在里面对他的影响，或者大学的，
嗯
所以你不用担心。
，OK，
会去 try，然后在这个过程中 major 是可以换来换去的，没关系，在美国，所以你 try 了之后，他自己会很快就去掌握他自己的一个想要的方向了。
好的好的，
嗯嗯
谢谢。
嗯，
If
不
I
用
could
担
jump in
心。
as well, like I know people who do investment banking for 2
哼，
and go to medical school. You can
哦，
study business and be pre-med, and it's a thing. Or maybe it's because I went to Penn and there's a big business influence there from Wharton, right? But people study everything and then they work for 2 years or 3 years in consulting or banking, and then they go to medical school. So if you really are interested in both, you can have both. It's just a little bit harder. Like in investment banking too, it's not an easy route either.
right, yeah,
Hard.
long hours.
Hours are terrible. I think my friends are all having like a really bad time right now on Wall Street.
Oh,
It's a really hard job as well. It's definitely not the easy way out after like maybe business school is easier in undergrad, but once you're working is really, really hard.
oh,
Like I just knew for sure I hated math. I'm like really bad at math by like our standards. So like I knew I could never do that sort of thing, but um yeah, I mean, there's people who do it all.
so you didn't take gap year, right, before medical school? You
I
just,
did. I'm in
you
my
did?
gap year now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you gap a year.
Yes.
嗯，就是该 gap 的就 gap，其实不 doesn't matter 的，让他也休息休息。
那这一年的话，那有些工作也不能够断，是吧？比如说科研呐、义工啊什么的，这 gap year 啊，或者是准备考试。
Well, a lot of people do gap years because they feel like they didn't have enough time in undergrad to get as many hours as they would like to apply before medical. But also, some people they just do gap years because they want like a new work experience or a new life experience before
Right.
it's off to a life of medicine. Like there are people who do a whole year abroad in a different country doing or teaching English, or they'll volunteer in a different country, or like I've met so many people who've done very, very different experiences, even consulting or banking, research, or like they like get married and have kids even before going to school. So just like even if now is not the time, like there's always a time later if you want to make it
还有
happen.
就是我补充一下，我女儿也收到了一个 offer，就是 Fulbright。
Yeah, I actually did not mention this, but there's a program called Fulbright where after undergrad you can apply to spend a year abroad in a different country, either doing research, teaching English. So I actually had applied to teach English for, and it's a fully funded year. They pay for your year, they pay for everything. It's a really great opportunity.
Kind of award, right?
Yeah, it's an award. And I applied to teach English abroad in Taiwan for a year. But they told me I got it in like August and I had already started working my job, so I turned it down. But the point is that like there's a million opportunities out there. Like you just have to like Google the right thing and it'll come up.
Oh, that's interesting. So what kind of job did you do for
I
that?
was a clinical research coordinator. So what I did feel was weak about my application was clinical hours. So I did have like experience with doctors and working in doctors' offices, but I still felt like it wasn't enough because I had friends who worked as EMTs for all 4 years of undergrad or just had a lot more patient experience. So I'm working as a clinical research coordinator, which means that I'm interacting with patients on a day-to-day basis, coordinating clinical trials, doing all the logistics, the data entry, the writing, the literature review. It's like not the most exciting job in the
那个
world.
医院的义工好申请吗
Yeah, it's very easy.
？Easy 吗？To apply 那个 volunteer at hospital？
It depends on where you are and like how
纽约
are. Like, if there are like 20 students applying for 10 spots, or if there are 20 students applying for 5 spots, like it depends on the competitiveness. But I think in Philadelphia, at least like at Penn, it's very easy because there are right around Penn's campus, there are like 4 hospitals where
OK，
volunteer and do research. So it's like if one doesn't work, you can try another one or you can try another one.
I see.
And then like when you're at the point of applying to gap year jobs, like at like my point, with the amount of research experience and volunteer experience that you have, like it's easy finding a job like a clinical research coordinator or something like
嗯
patient facing in a hospital because you have a lot of experience ideally throughout all of your extracurriculars during your time as an undergrad.
what's your major？
I majored in biology and health and societies, which is
哦，
like a combination of history and sociology and anthropology.
嗯，
So a lot of humanities, but also
哎
still
那他们都说考医学院这个 GPA 是很重要的，那 GPA 也不一定要4.0吧？
no, oh my gosh, I didn't have a 4.0. I got like a B plus in physics and I thought it was the end of the world. Like it was.
啊，
I think that's the case for like high school as well. Like I didn't have the best grades in high school. Like I
嗯
still did well enough, obviously, but I wasn't valedictorian or like salutatorian or anything close to that. And then in college, I had like a lot of A minuses. I had a B plus. But as long as your GPA is over like a 3.8, 3.85, like there's no difference, especially because the rigor between colleges is
right，
different. Like obviously a 4.0 at like a community college is going to be a lot less impressive than a 4.0 at in
嗯
school. So that's why the MCAT is kind of a standard to compare yourself to.
I see，OK，谢谢。
嗯嗯，对，我们会有recording 之后放在群里，不知道您有没有加过我们群里啊或什么的，我们都会分享的。
嗯，
非常好，gap year 就让他有的时候让休息休息，我去看看那个旅游啊什么的，他会更变换他的思维模式。嗯，
那这些孩子 gap year 的时候，也不是待着，也是做事情的。
对对对，现在也就是有一些学生就是在美国，他们就是不急于去上大学，因为他觉得很多他没准备好，他这个
嗯
心理没准备好，他需要休息一下，或者是说他需要再去尝试一下他没尝试的东西。
嗯，
所以他就 gap year 1年，其实也挺好的。我觉得大学太快了，4年，嗯，
是。
没必要就逼着孩子一定要马上就进入大学，
可是 gap year 的时候，他们都是在工作吧？
也不一定，有的就在旅游啊，有的歇着呀，有的或者是帮助一些周围的一些孩子呀、小动物啊。刚才听 Christine 不是说了，还有结婚生孩子的吗？
I think the consensus is just that you can't do nothing. Like you have to do something. You just can't do nothing.
中间有结婚的。
这个讲座会有回放的，我们现在都已经 recording 了，然后我会放到群里。如果你在社群
好
的话，或者
好的好
加
的
我的话，
呀，
对
那就
给你
对
看你的
休息吧，
链接。
已经 take 这么长时间，很晚了。
好的，好的，那行，那非常
谢谢 Christine，也谢谢你们呀。
对对对，再次恭喜你啊，Christine，还恭喜你妈妈、你的 family 呀、拿到这么多的医学院的录取，所
对，
以
好优秀，好优秀，妈妈也应该非常 proud。
对对，非常 proud，然后非常 nice 的父
是，
母啊，非常好，非常
嗯
wonderful 的 family 呀。
，Yeah，very nice，Yeah，Thank you all 啊，谢谢，
谢谢，也希望你女儿一切顺利，开人，然后有什么问题随时过来问啊。
好的好的，那就 Good night 啊，谢谢，
哎，
，Good night，You
Good
have a
night.
good weekend，拜拜，
too，OK，bye。
拜拜，我们下次再聊，
好。
Oh, bye.
拜拜，Thank you，拜拜，
Bye. Good night. Bye bye.
拜。
Bye.